The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Lining up, Adrian Noble, and here it comes. Over the kick, Canucks.
Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
Hey, we down by 17, but I didn't hear no bell. This game ain't over yet. So the season is over.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Game Day. A very 50-50 episode as we're back here on Eagle Tuesdays, and to spoil going on ahead, Eagles obviously got a win against the Texans, but in much more sadder news and much more important news, the Phillies end up losing the World Series in 6 to the Houston Astros in pretty much disappointing fashion, to say the least. Really sucks that just couldn't get it done, especially at home. Sad to see us drop 2 games at home when we really should have won them. Obviously getting no hit at home is not something you want to see as well. But I really don't know what to say about that series other than just it's a mix. It's disappointing to go out that way, but you're thankful to even be there because, this is a team that was 22 and 29 when they fired Joe Girardi. And then they bring on Rob Thompson, and to take them, they had their struggles throughout the seasons as well, but to take them to making that final spot in the playoffs, and go from the wild card all the way to the World Series. Obviously, you want to win it, and obviously you want these guys to play better than they did in the season, but you can't be more proud of them for the fact that, they got that far, And it doesn't take away all the amazing plays that we saw throughout this playoff run, I've seen people try and say that that Bryce Harper home run, at in Citizens Bank is not memorable anymore because they didn't go on to win it, but who cares? A lot of what are we gonna start discounting a bunch of plays just because people didn't win? Look at all the plays in Eagles history. Are we gonna discount all the miracle at the Meadowlands because they didn't end up winning the championship that season? Are we gonna discount all the moments that led up to that point? Obviously moments like the Philly special are immortalized because of the fact that they won, but I just think it's kind of disingenuous to discredit moments like Bryce Harper's home run and all the other plays that were made throughout the playoff run just because they didn't end up winning the World Series. That no one obviously people bring it up right after, but no one discredits Allen Iverson's crossover on Tyronn Lue. No one discredits all of Aaron Rodgers' Hail Mary attempts and all the faxes, and people will be like, oh, well, that's different because they ended up winning those games. Was in the end they lost the series, and that's what we're talking about here. These plays leading up to the biggest game, and what are we going to discount all these incredible moments just because someone didn't win the big one? It's those moments are still iconic and are going to go down, especially because what makes this more iconic and all the stuff that went into it was the fact that this was their first playoff run in 11 years, so obviously people are going to remember it, but as far as the actual World Series goes, it's a tough one to really analyze and break down because it's the Phillies roster was definitely outmatched, I would say. And it's not, I wouldn't say they were outmatched offensively per se when you look at the names on paper. But when you watch the games, you can tell they were just outmatched because of the fact that this Phillies team, you know, they live by the play style of ball goes boom. But the issue with ball goes boom is that if you live by it, you're going to end up dying by it. And that's what we saw in the World Series, is the fact that so many times they were just striking out because they were looking to send that ball to the, you know, for a home run, to send it out that stadium and all that, you know. And it was like, that's not how you're going to win this game. It may have gotten you there, but it was never going to win you that, you know, because I'm sorry, but like, compare it to the Astros, you know. Look at the Astro players. If I remember correctly, I don't think Altuve had a single home run at all in this postseason, but yet he was constantly getting on base or hitting and driving in runs, you know. Or Jeremy Pena, you know, the rookie, is out here, you know, I think he hit a home run in this series, but he also, you know, was a lot of times getting, you know, the extra base hits or just base hits in general. And it's like, that's how you're going to win the game, is getting those base hits and then having a guy come up and blast that ball out the arena. That's why we lost Game 6. We allowed 2 guys to get on base, and here comes Yordan Alvarez to hit that ball out the park. Obviously, another thing that played into that was the terrible substitution at the time of taking out Wheeler and substituting in Alvarado, you know, who gave that pitch right down the line to Yordan Alvarez. But, you know, you don't get to that point if you don't allow these guys to get on base, you know. And that's something that the Phillies roster should have really been trying to replicate, is, you know, look at what got the Astros here. Yes, they have big hitters, much like this team has big hitters, but, you know, you got to learn that the ball doesn't need to go boom every single time. Obviously, that's what helped us win Game 1. But again, it wasn't going to win you the series. And the thing is, obviously people had struggles, but, you know, Alec Bohm, Bryson Stott, I mean, he can hit, obviously, but Gene Segura, you know, these guys kind of are the ones that are really good at those base hits, getting on base, getting walked. Especially Bryson Stott was constantly getting walked. But the issue is they didn't fix the lineup appropriately to kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of utilize that best. You have all your heavy hitters in the front and all the guys who can't hit at the end of your lineup, and so that just makes you one-dimensional, which we saw in Game 5, you know, where Bryce Harper was up to bat, and they intentionally walked him. Why? Because they knew Nick Castellanos was right behind him, who had been hitless all night, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly. I think that was Game 5, yeah. You know, they didn't want to pitch to him. They knew that if they pitched anything good to Bryce Harper, there was definitely a chance he'd knock it out the park and tie the game up, win the game, whatever. And so they were like, no, we're not pitching him. We're going to intentionally walk him and let a guy like Nick Castellanos go for the hit. Who, you know, what a surprise that his biggest contribution to this team, especially in the World Series and the playoffs, was his defense of all things. But it's like, they don't do that if you have a guy, obviously, again, because of the fact that they were trying to make the ball go boom, all of them were struggling. But at least from a lineup standpoint, you don't walk Bryce Harper knowing there's a guy that has that potential to knock it out the park, like JT Realmuto or Rhys Hoskins, you know. And that's the thing that was frustrating the most, is that and it's the same thing about baseball. Baseball is so frustrating, the fact that they're stuck in their ways where they don't want to make adjustments, where they'll just keep the same lineup thinking that things will change. At some point, you got to look at these games and think, okay, they aren't in their rhythm here. What can we do to switch it around? Put Segura after Bryce Harper, maybe. Or, I don't know, switch Rhys and Realmuto in the lineup, you know, so that maybe Rhys can see more pitches before he goes up to bat, you know. I think the only ones that were fine in their spots were Bryce Harper and Schwarber. They were the only two that, like, really fit in their spots in the lineup and justified not moving them around. But everyone else, it was like, man, we really should consider moving all these different things around because it just makes no sense to keep them there because we saw those struggles. And as far as pitching goes, I think the biggest struggle was just that none of our aces played like aces, basically. Like Nola would give you a good, like, I think it was game 5 specifically, or was it game 4? I'm trying to remember. Basically, Nola gave like a good 4 innings, and then he just fell off a cliff right there. Wheeler gave a good inning, not in game 2 if I remember correctly, but in game 6. Game 6, yeah. Game 6, he gave a good effort. He gave his best. I think he went 5, almost 6 innings, which is what you want out of your ace. But then they took him out and ended up giving the game-winning home run away, basically. And a lot of our relief pitchers, kind of, I don't know, they kind of did their job, but at the most part, they were letting up hits at different times. It was like. And speaking of relief pitchers, I think that was another issue, was just Rob Thompson and oh my gosh, what's the other guy's name? I forget his name. I don't know why I'm blanking on it, but basically the ones who are in charge of the pitching rotation and the bullpen, it's like the issue was they stopped doing what got them there. Obviously, you're probably like, how does that make sense if you're saying they shouldn't have stuck with their strategy of ball goes boom? But like when it came to the bullpen, they didn't stick with the strategy that got them there, and that was just plan according to today's game, not tomorrow's game or the game after. Why did they win so many games in the series? Because they weren't afraid to throw out as many pitchers as they could. They weren't afraid to throw out Sir Anthony Dominguez, then follow it up with Eflin and then Suarez, or they weren't afraid to throw out Alvarado, Brad Hand, Nick Nelson, David Robertson. They weren't afraid of that rotation. That one game, what did they do? They threw out Sir Anthony Dominguez, Zach Eflin, David Robertson, and then Ranger Suarez at the end. They played them to win that game. They didn't think about, what about next game, They played according to win that game, and they didn't do that this series. So many times you were like, send in this guy, and it was like, well, no, they're saving them for the next game because they want them in relief duty then. But it's like, that's not what got you to this point. What got you to this point was playing according to today's game, And that was their mentality the entire time. It was, win this game and then we'll worry about tomorrow. But they started getting in their own head and were like, well, no, we need to worry about having this and this, which, obviously you can plan accordingly, but like, look at what ended up happening. Because they did that, what happened? So many times were they not throwing in their best reliefs to stop, the momentum that the Astros were getting. Real kind of disappointing, and now you just look to the offseason to see what you can do to improve. There's rumors of Trey Turner potentially heading over to Philly. A lot of people are saying that's almost like set in stone at this point, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I know I saw they didn't pick up Gene Segura's option, so I don't think he'll be coming back, which kind of sucks, Segura's kind of I don't know, he's definitely a fan favorite, and I think people just kind of look at it as a mutual thing where they're like, hey, we can't pay, or it's not really that they can't, but they probably don't want to pay him that much, and plus he can probably get a better offer at another club, and they kind of look at it as a mutual agreement that we want you to get more money, but we also made sure to get you to the playoffs and, more importantly, a World Series before you left, But it's going to be interesting to see what they do. The big talk in the Philly fan base as well, other than free agency acquisitions, is that there's a guy out in Japan, and I really should have his name memorized by now, by how many times I've told people, like my family, about this guy that wants to come over. But apparently he's a guy in Japan, and it's funny, he wants to, his main destination that he wants to come to is Philadelphia, and he actually, I think, I say this, but I can't say for sure, but I'm pretty sure he has, he named his dog after Bryce Harper. Like, his dog is named Bryce, if I remember correctly. But, Masataka Yoshida, from Japan, reportedly is asking to become basically a free agent, and that he wants to come to the Phillies. And the thing is, he's an outfielder. So with all the talks of, what to do to fix this roster so that they can win not only more games, but win a World Series, there's talks again. The girl is likely going to hit free agency, and they might not bring him back. So people are saying, so Bryson Stott can move to second base. You bring in someone for shortstop. And the big move that everyone's talking about is what to do with Rhys Hoskins, because everyone was kind of disappointed in his performance and all that, and they're kind of looking at him as a scapegoat, because they're like, well, we're not going to blame Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper, because even though they were struggling at times, they at least were sometimes getting that offense going. They were the heart and soul of this team, so you're not going to put any blame on them. Stott and Bohm are too young to really replace or just throw aside already, So, they're pretty set in stone. Although people were disappointed with Nick Castellanos' offense, he made up for it on defense. We're not going to deny that he made incredible defensive plays. But also, they barely signed him and gave him this contract. You're not going to get rid of him to try and fix this team. JT just won a Golden Glove. He's one of the best catchers in baseball. You're not going to get rid of him, And so it's like, obviously the bullpen needs help, but that leaves one spot to eye, and that's first base. Rhys Hoskins, a guy who kind of messed up routine plays, kind of had defensive errors, and wasn't really hitting well. And so if he gets traded away, everyone's discussing about, bringing in this guy from Japan, but he's an outfielder, and your outfield's already full with Schwarber, Castellanos, and Harper. So the move that people are saying is, how about run a lineup where you try out Castellanos at first base, Schwarber in left, Harper in the right, and try this guy out in center field, and then that can leave a guy like Brandon Marsh to be a designated hitter, or you keep Bryce Harper in the designated hitter spot and keep Castellanos at right, and figure out who to bring in first base to replace JT. But I don't think you want to be paying Bryce Harper all that money just to be a designated hitter. So I think the first option makes the most sense, But it's going to be real interesting to see. Obviously, the big changes need to be at bringing in someone to help out that defense, and also, bringing in guys who can solve that base hitting issue, where it's like, just don't swing for the fences every time. And fixing, the bullpen and the pitching rotation is going to always be the major thing, because obviously you have Nola and Wheeler still, though. They had a couple of, if you want to call them wonky performances in the World Series. They did pretty good leading up to the World Series, and then now you have Ranger Suarez emerging as the third option, with his amazing performances throughout this series and playoff run, but then it's like, you got to look more towards better relievers, and maybe even a fourth option at starter, because though you have Syndergaard, he can only really go about 4 innings at most if he's pitching well. So yeah, the bullpen issues are definitely going to be one to look to fix, and the hitting issue is definitely going to be another thing that you have to look to fix. But quickly we'll move to the football side of things, and we'll finally talk about football, finishing up our starting the dual review part of this episode. But we'll look into this week of the NFL, I believe it was it week 8 or week 9? Man, I'm kind of struggling to remember. Let's see. Let's look at the schedule. This was week 9. So we started off on Thursday night with the Eagles versus the Texans, which we'll get into. But there was the Los Angeles Chargers versus Atlanta Falcons game, which was pretty crazy because of the fumble, the double fumble, really. That one of the Chargers players fumbled, the Falcon player picks it up, starts running it back, and then he fumbles it, and the Chargers get it back. And they ended up winning that game, which was really crazy to see. Chicago versus Miami was crazy, specifically for the fact that Justin Fields went off, and he had, I think it was the most rushing yards for a quarterback ever. I think he had 178 yards rushing, which was pretty crazy to see. Joe Mixon went off on the day for 153 yards, and I think it was 4 touchdowns for the Bengals against Carolina. Green Bay lost to Detroit, in which Aaron Rodgers threw, I think it was 3 interceptions, and is honestly just looking pretty bad. Just both, him and the receiving core just not being able to mesh well with each other, I guess you could say. New England beat the Colts, and Frank Reich ends up getting fired, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. I've seen a couple people say that, hey, maybe he wants to come in and be a consultant for the Eagles, and their roster. Definitely going to be interesting to see what happens there. Funny enough, I saw that apparently, I think it's Marvin Harris's son is in this upcoming draft, I think. Or not in this upcoming draft, but I think it's the next one. I don't know, but people basically are just making memes saying that they're gonna rebuild the big three that Indianapolis used to have by drafting all their sons. So, or not sons, but the family members of former Colts members, especially since they brought in Jeff Saturday to be the coach. They're gonna bring in Peyton Manning, or not Peyton Manning. They're gonna bring in Archie Manning. Wait, no. Too many extra letters. Arch Manning. They're going to bring in him. They're going to bring in Marvin Harrison's sons. Marvin Harrison Jr., I believe, is the prospect. And then Edwin James' son is also, I think, in that same draft with Marvin Harrison's son. If I remember correctly, you've seen the meme on I forget where I saw it, but yeah, that would be pretty funny to see if they end up actually doing that. Buffalo lost to the Jets in a surprising one. That was real surprising to see. Josh Allen apparently got injured and may be out 4 weeks, and yet analysts will still find a way to put them above the Eagles in their power rankings. Minnesota beat Washington to improve to, I believe, 7-1. So to all the people that were like, oh, you guys haven't beat anyone, we gave them the Vikings their only loss in the season at this point, but everyone's still going to use the excuse, oh, it's because it was Kirk Cousins in primetime. Is it our fault that Kirk Cousins plays terrible in primetime? No, take it up with him, not us. Las Vegas blew another lead to they blew a lead to Jacksonville, and it's their third blown lead of this season, especially of 17 plus points or more. Seattle continues to somehow be dominant. It's crazy to see that they're doing this well as they beat the Cardinals, and Kyler Murray is now 0-2 since Modern Warfare 2 dropped. I think he's 1-2 since Overwatch dropped, but I think he's more of a COD guy, so we're going to stick with the 0-2 stat. The Rams somehow lost to the Bucks. I didn't even see that, but that looks like a terrible game, 16-3, or 13, I mean. Baltimore in the Monday night game beat New Orleans as expected, and shout out Baltimore for helping the Eagles get a higher pick. They're now back at the 6th overall pick, I think, now with that loss for the Saints. And KC beat Tennessee in overtime. Very surprising to see, but that's it's of course going to go to overtime when you have the defense that the Titans do and Derrick Henry right there to lead your offense. But Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs are the Chiefs. And obviously they're going to come out on top for that one. But we turn to our Thursday night game. Because it was the battle of Philly and Houston this week. But obviously this one was Eagles fans don't hate me, but this was the less important one because when the Phillies are in the World Series and, they end up losing, that obviously overpowers a win against their football team that is, aren't they like, they're 1-6-1. So, yeah, of course, this was expected, Eagles have to beat them, But that's why today's title is another Kendrick Lamar song because, we're united in grief because even though we beat the football team, it's more disappointing that we lost the World Series, and so we gotta comfort our baseball brethren because obviously Philly loves all its sports teams, and when one of them loses, especially in a World Series, we technically all lose. And also the Union lost to LAFC, so it was just a terrible week. But the Eagles at least gave us some glimmer of hope by winning. Can't say the same for the Sixers, which I probably should get to covering basketball soon, but at the same time, I don't know. I think since baseball ended, maybe I might do it. Who knows? We'll see. But diving into the game, of course, just looking at the overall stats. Jalen Hurts, 21 to 27, 243 yards, 2 touchdowns. Was sacked 4 times though. That's pretty crazy. And then he had 9 attempts at rushing for 23 yards. Miles Sanders, 17 carries for 93 yards. Kenneth Gainwell, 4 carries for 22 yards. Both had touchdowns. Real nice to see Miles Sanders just really, really working his hardest to get that bag. And sadly, if he keeps working this hard, I don't know if it'll be the Eagles to give him that bag. Because who knows? There might be another team that swoops in and is like, hey, we know that the Eagles are going to give you a contract, but what if we gave you an even bigger contract? And especially one that they couldn't match. We did get 2 interceptions on the day and 3 sacks, so I'm glad to see that here in the box score that they got a sack or 3 sacks on Davis Mills and 2 interceptions. Obviously, they let him throw 2 touchdowns though, but they held him pretty much in check. But the one that they couldn't hold in check was Dameon Pierce, the rookie, who ever since Breece Hall got injured, he's just been taking the rookie running back race on his own. 27 carries, 139 yards. I used to have him on my fantasy team, but I traded him away in a trade to upgrade my other positions because, listen, man, I'm struggling in fantasy this year, and obviously you can keep a guy like him, but he wasn't putting up, he was putting up consistent numbers, but it wasn't enough to win me games, so I made a trade for a couple players that do put up numbers that could win me games. But, so yeah, that was the offense. Obviously, how could I skip over the receiving, of course? Dallas Goedert, 8 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. A.J. Brown, 4 catches, 59 yards and a touchdown. And Devontae Smith, 2 catches, 22 yards. Quez Watkins, 2 catches, 25 yards. Good game from the offense. Dallas Goedert continuing to emerge and rank his way up in the tight end hierarchy. A.J. Brown being, consistent as always. Want Devontae to start getting more touches, but it's a run-heavy offense, so what can you really expect? And looking at the defense, James Bradbury got an interception. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson now has, I believe this is his 5th or 6th interception on the year, and his 4th straight game with an interception. I think. Let me see. Let me go back to the Eagles schedule. He got an interception in the Steelers game, the Cowboys game, the Cardinals game. Did he get one in the Jaguars game, though? That's the one I can't remember. Let's see. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, no interception, no. So it was Arizona that he got one, then Dallas, then Pittsburgh, and now with the Texans he gets another interception. So that's his 4 straight games with at least 1 interception. He's probably going to get an extension sooner than later, because you really don't want to let him walk after that. Oh my gosh, I didn't even notice. So we got 3 sacks on the day, and all 3 of them came from Javon Hargrave. That is crazy to see. Other than that, pretty looks, especially from watching, they had a pretty good game, but The biggest thing was they couldn't stop the run at times. They did allow the game to be closer than they should have. You look at the breakdown, it was tied at half, but then after that, that's when the Eagles just, boom. 7 in the third quarter, 8 in the fourth quarter, and held the Texans to only 3 points in the second half. Real good to see from them. They really shouldn't have kept it that close, but a win is a win. Look on to next week as we take on the Commanders again, who last time we played them, we beat them 24-8, I believe it was. Yeah, 24-8. That was the game that Carson Wentz got sacked 9 times, I believe. Let me double check that stat. 9 times, yes, because I remember titling that episode 9 in the afternoon. Yeah, that was a game where not only did he get sacked 9 times, but Jalen Hurts threw for 340 yards and 3 touchdowns, with A.J. Brown going off for... Oh, no, that was Devontae Smith's game where he went off for 8 catches, 169 yards, and a touchdown. A.J. Brown also went off 5 catches, 85 yards, 1 touchdown. Dallas Goedert, 326, 1. Hoping for a repeat, Obviously, they don't have Carson Wentz starting. It's Taylor Heineke, but should still be an easy win. Indianapolis the week after that should be an easy win. And then you got 2 toss-up games in the Packers and the Titans, because Aaron Rodgers can just be Aaron Rodgers, and the Titans can just run Derrick Henry down your throat. But looking forward at least the next 2 weeks. Should on paper be easy. And not much more you can say than just excited to keep covering this Eagles season, and simply just hoping for more success than sorry man, it's just you're hoping for more success than what we've seen from all the other Philly franchises so far, but at the same time you don't want to get your hopes up too high. That's my sort of thing. I know people think of it as like, oh, you're not having faith as a fan and all of that. But really, to me, it's just I've learned with Philly. You don't have expectations with Philly, because it always ends up in disappointment. And to save yourself the disappointment, you don't really believe everything is real until the end, when it all settles. I didn't think that whole playoff run from the Phillies was real until we finally lost, and that's when I was obviously disappointed. I wanted to see more from them, but at the same time I was like, hey, I'm just happy to be here at this point. Obviously it sucks to lose, but to make this journey from wild card is amazing, and it will be interesting to see what happens with this Eagles team. We're now 8-0, and it will be interesting to see what happens come playoff time. NFC is looking extremely weak for the most part. Obviously there's the Vikings, but we got past them. There's the Seahawks, who the Eagles always struggle against, so I wonder how that would go down if we were to play them. We got all the teams in our own division still. And it's going to be real interesting to see, man. But until the next time, as always, remember, many things in this life may seem impossible, but if you fight for your dreams will fight for you.